Hello everyone, and welcome back to another endgame build, my continuing series of builds that you might be putting together pre-Alatreon. He's coming out. We don't know if there's going to be an extreme version of Alatreon, but presumably there will be, because I really think he's probably like the next, he's probably the next behemoth. Not only that, but really there's going to be a lot of arch-tempered monsters to fight. So your thoughts should be, how can I give up a little bit of damage to have a lot more defense? And that's precisely what this build answers, that kind of question. Are you struggling with something like Arch-Tempered Master Rank Kieran? This build is going to be at your side. You were always at my side. So one of the things that I think people get wrong about the lance and the gun lance is they see the big shield on it, the arm of the weapon, like you can see it right now, and you think, wow, this is a real tanky weapon. Then you build guard and you build guard up and you're like, wow, I'm a tank. I'm tough. I can guard a lot. That must mean I'm survivable, right? That must mean I have good defense. Wrong. The reason why that's not accurate is because defense is not just about your ability to guard. Defense, in my opinion, my philosophical view of defense in a video game comes down to what happens when you mess up? What happens when you mess up? That is really the question I try to answer when I'm thinking about how survivable and defensive a weapon truly is. Because everybody was like, well, just get good, right? Just don't make any mistakes. Well, you can build guard, you can build guard up, and I think people feel like they've invested in defense and therefore they must be defensive. But what happens when you're in the middle of an attack and the recovery frames don't end in time and the monster whips around and punishes you and all you have is guard up and guard? Well, what you really have is just a build with health boost. See? So let's go ahead and take a look at the build. What is a defensive, offensive Gunlance build really look like? It has Divine Blessing on it. Divine Blessing Secret, once again. Are you surprised? If you've been following the series, you're not, because every build I've put together includes Divine Blessing except for the Gunlance build. Except for the Heavy Bowgun and Light Bowgun builds, I believe. I believe those didn't have room for it. Divine Blessing on the Gunlance. Is that overkill? Absolutely not. Once again, you feel defensive because visually you have a big shield. You feel defensive because you've put on guard and you've put on guard up. Wow, I must be so tough because I can guard everything. But no, really, defense is about what happens to you when you've made a mistake and the monster has punished you. That, to me, is when good defense comes in and saves you. And Divine Blessing is the number one skill to do that, in my opinion. Divine Blessing really stands above the rest by cutting damage virtually in half. Of Divine Blessing, and the weakness of Divine Blessing is that it doesn't activate all the time, but it activates often enough for me to consider it much stronger than most skills. All right, so we have Divine Blessing Secret on a Gunlance build. What did we really give up for that? Well, mostly just one thing. We gave up Slinger Capacity Secret. That is going to cut down your damage. The reason for that is because your Wormstake Blast, or whatever it's called, I'm trying to remember the name of the move, is Wormstake Blast, right? The little thing you stick into the monster is not going to stay there quite as long, but with Slinger Capacity 3, it's actually still going to stay there for a while, and we do keep the Silver Soul Braces on the build, right? The other question you might be asking, gosh, why long shelling 6 when you could have wide shelling 7? Now, I like wide shelling 7. I think it's cool that it does a little more damage and it can flinch the monster real well. But the reason why I end up going with the long shelling is really just the range. You know, when we're talking about how skilled, or not skilled, how good a weapon is, one of the things we really often talk about is how good of a reach does that weapon have. Sticky Ammo is a terrific example of an attack that has so much damage, so much reach, that it really just has like this ultimate advantage in the fight. And so I really do prefer weapons that have a further reach. You can run wide shelling. It wouldn't be hard to swap between wide shelling versus long shelling. But in this case, also the other nice thing I like here is we can pick up that extra level of Zora Magdaros Essence. And this is another thing that's really a nice convenience. You move it on to the Gunlance because the Gunlance isn't going to be building any attack up large, right? So that's the other reason why I like the long shelling in this case. It's just really strong still. Let's talk about all the damage skills on the build for people who are unfamiliar with Gunlance builds. Artillery Secret from Zora Magdaros. You've got Focus 3, because we're going to be charging shells, right? So you just charge shell, charge shell, charge shell. We have Slinger Capacity. That's for the Wormstake Blast, which sticks out of the monster, and you shoot at it kind of like a headshot zone. And then we have Capacity Boost, which gives you an extra shot, so you don't reload as often. And that's going to be all of the offensive skills, right? What about defensive skills? So guard 5 and guard look defensive, and they do help you guard incoming attacks, but you're like you're this weapon that you have to guard attacks, don't you? Because your sheathing is real slow, and you can't really strafe like other weapons can. Think of the light bowgun. You just strafe everything, and that's what I call outspacing. You just outspace moves. You don't even need to guard it. So you have to invest all these points into guard and to guard up in order to protect the fact that your weapon has weaker mechanics than other weapons when it comes to walking and when it comes to sheathing. In fact, I've talked about this before. I think that a slow sheath speed is one of the most dangerous things to have in the game, one of the worst mechanics to have it on your weapon, because in my opinion, the most common time to die is when the monster has you with such low health that you have to heal, like you don't have an option. And so you start to go through the sheathing process, and when you sheath, you're locked into that animation, and B, you have a very slow walk speed during the sheath, so you're very prone during that very moment. And when you're using a shield weapon like the Gunlance and the Lance, while you're holding guard up, if a monster has a strong piercing move, guard might not be good enough. Yeah, you might have enough stamina to withstand it, could still kill you. So I've had a lot of experience with the Lance. I've had a lot of experience with the Gunlance, both of them actually. And so they're really nice for blocking certain kinds of moves, but I feel like they can have weaknesses as well, primarily that slow sheath speed. So that's why we have Divine Blessing on the build. I do not consider it overkill. It's there to protect you when things go wrong, but really it also, just like with every other weapon you've seen it on, longsword, greatsword, hammer, you've seen it on just about every melee build I've put together now for this series. It does precisely the same thing for the Gunlance. It reduces the damage you take, which allows you to have more uptime, and really it reduces your risk and increases your survivability, and this is terrific for really, really tough fights. Let's talk about room on the build for other skills. You've got jumping. So Evade Extender 3 is on the build to give you a little more maneuverability. You can get closer to the monster sooner. You could drop these for some other skill, like it could be some sort of elemental resistance, it could be fortitude, whatever it is you find that you really need. And then we also have Evade Window, another thing you could drop. You could put like a hard elemental resist jewel in here. So there's room definitely on the build, just like all the other builds. You also notice that I have the recovery up skill, and you're probably wondering why recovery up. It's because the shelling really is so consistent. It always deals the same damage that you're always really going to get a nice chunk of recovery every time you shell the monster. So recovery up is a nice skill to have on a all shelling Gunlance build, or long shelling Gunlance build. Let's go ahead and pick a monster to fight. I should have done this before. Let's see. We could fight Stygians. We fought Stygians and Ogre like twice already. Is there another one? Oh, okay, here's Garuga. Let's do Garuga. I actually like Garuga. He's a lot of fun. And we'll have a meal. Of course, we're going to have Bombardier. So let's use a gourmet voucher. Right? There it is, Bombardier. If you're going to be playing Gunlance or sticky ammo, it's great to play in a full session, because often in a full session, somebody will use a gourmet voucher and you can just kind of piggyback off of them. And, you know, when nobody does, you can use your own voucher and they'll piggyback off of you. So it's like a trade-off. All right, and we're off for departure. We are off for departure. Gunlance. Man, I really like what they did with it for Iceborne. I like the fact that you have this new Wormstake Blast, which not only allows you to do more damage than you were doing before, but it gives you something to do. You know, it's funny, one of the biggest problems with the Gunlance in the base game, in my opinion, is that it was boring. You don't want to play a boring weapon. You know, you just shell, reload, shell. It's actually very similar to the Lance's hop. The Lance's poke, hop, poke, hop, right? And I don't think I think it can be pretty. Let's see. I'm just going to jump down. Does he see me? He doesn't see me. Okay, we'll drop the rocks then. Cool. Sweet. I think people do get tired of that repetition sometimes, you know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. And Gunlance especially had a lot of repetition to it. So we shoot him in the foot, and it's like, why the foot? And I like shooting a monster on a low part of their body, because This allows me to get the most range out of my shelling by allowing me to just use the forward shelling. Go ahead and keep shooting them. You notice we have the advantage of... Oh, god damn it. Let me just guard this. We have the advantage of just ignoring that chin. For a lot of melee weapons, the chin's actually a problem. Oregon's chin. The chin comes in and it makes your weapon bounce off, but Gunlance shelling doesn't really bother with that, you know? So with the lance, you would probably consider having to avoid the chin or just being careful around it, because you don't want to deflect off of it, because that's not only dangerous, you also lose sharpness when you deflect. So it's dangerous to deflect, you lose damage when you deflect because you're not attacking, but also you lose sharpness. All kinds of bad things happen when you deflect. And what's interesting with the Gunlance is, because you're really only shelling, you don't have to deal with being deflected off of a monster and worrying about building something like Mind's Eye. So it's just another one of those interesting advantages that the Gunlance has. God damn it, it's not charging. I'm holding the button down to charge and it's not working. Alright, let's get this going. This is the Wyvern Fire. And it's not, I didn't actually get it. Oh, is he going to get the tremor on me? Yes, he is. There we go. Let's try it. Third time's a charm, guys. Stop moving, Oregon. There we go. Let's grab him by the face while we still have the Temporal Mantle on. Alright, he's going to go ahead and drop a pod for us. What kind of pod? Slinger Bomb? That's pretty good. Alright, we got our Slinger Bomb ready to go. We just have that ready ahead of time. Ah, too early. I got greedy. I did get greedy. But see, that's what happens. You get greedy and then you get punished. People think that good defense means having guard 5 and guard, but the truth is, a lot of the times when you actually get hurt by the monster, it's when you were trying to attack the monster too much. And this is one of the downfalls to thinking really just in terms of damage output, you know. You think in terms of damage output only, and you're like, I'll rush him down, I'll rush him down, I'll rush him down, and then he actually lands a hit on you because you're pushing too hard or you're too impatient, like I am. I'm constantly impatient. Or perhaps you're just miscalculating how long your recovery frames really last. Alright, oh darn, we don't have enough shells. I think we do actually, let's go for it. Nah, we don't. That was terribly aimed actually. Let's try that again. Darn. I'm gonna get this set up real fast. You miscalculate your recovery frames and then all of a sudden the monster's punishing you. This is an easy punish right here. Aha! So there's our Worm Stake Blast. What are you gonna do about it? Don't do it. Now we just have to shoot him in that leg over and over again. Is that my cat? You know what's funny about Gunlances too? Everyone's using sticky ammo these days, and guess what? Pairs really well with sticky ammo. Gunlance Wormstake Blast, because the sticky ammo gets the benefit from it. Which I find really cool. Hope he got me with the roar. Just guard it. 3 and 4. If I let go of the guard, will I still get hit? Oh, look at that! I won't. That's interesting. If you block the initial damage from that fire attack, you're then no longer capable of being hit by it. That's how some moves in Monster Hunter work that same way. That's why I was willing to test it, because I realized it might work that way as well. Ooh, just guard all these. Guarding is convenient for certain moves, you know, moves that are like difficult to dodge basically. So that's the upside to using something like the lance or the gun lance. Where'd he go? Let's try that again. Alright, we blocked it, and now look, we're just gonna attack through it. That's cool. I got 3 shots out. That's that little bit of information that you need to know in order to like speed run a monster. You know what I mean? You got to know everything about that monster to get your damage, get your time up. You know what I mean? Your damage up, your time not up. I should say your time down. Dragonator can be used. Where'd he go, by the way? Here he is. I don't think so. He's just asking to be punished. That's the Drool, and unlike the Lance, we're just going to actually punish the Drool. So I'm just not a fan of the Clutch Claw. Just not a fan. I thought maybe at the beginning that it was okay, and then over time I just sort of realized I don't enjoy it that much. So I like these explosive weapons like the Gunlance that you don't have to constantly soften monster body parts, which I find to be terribly inconsistent. When you want to soften a monster, you have to be real careful. Oh, nice. We're going to get a shot of this too, huh? That's a lot of damage. Ooh, he's drooling. So we're going to punish the drool rather than using it as our opportunity to sharpen. Oh, did he tremor again? Wow, I didn't even see that. That was fast. Don't do it. Don't go bonkers. It's just, you can see that also that the Wormstake Blast really has lasted for a good while. Should we try to kill this guy with the Dragonator at this point? I don't know if he's that close yet. Come on, man. He's always rolling away. Isn't that annoying? Don't do it. Oh, see, he actually got me there. He actually got me there. Crazy. He actually slammed that chin down and broke my stamina because I wasn't paying attention. So again, when it comes to defense, the concept of defense, people tend to think just because if you've got guard, you've got a shield, you must be defensive. But actually, no, defense, in my opinion, is more about how your character handles making a mistake. Do you live after the mistake is over, or are you dead because of the mistake? And so you could talk about concepts like, is your weapon more mistake prone than other weapons? And that's one thing to talk about. Like, maybe it's harder to make a mistake with certain weapons over others. But the interesting thing is, you know, I don't find the Gunlance or the Lance any less mistake prone than any other weapon. They're all roughly the same, in my opinion, in terms of making mistakes. What's different about the weapons is that the Gunlance and the Lance, you have to build guard up and guard in order to sort of be using the guard correctly, and this leaves less room for other defensive skills. Dude, of course he would get exhausted way over here. Don't do it. Alright, we're really in brown sharpness, which means we're missing quite a bit of our shelling damage. Let's go ahead and use this. Oops, let's use this lever. Why did I think that the lever is going to be used with the A button? Alright, he's out of here. Probably should have used that earlier. Anyway, so those are some concepts with defense, and this is why you see me running Divine Blessing on the Gunlance instead of whatever else I might have ran, you know what I mean, in order to get more damage out. Maybe, honestly, when it comes to skills on the Gunlance for increasing your damage output, a lot of the times you just see something like earplugs anyways, which is, it is nice for getting your damage up, but it's not like a huge difference in your damage output. But I think that Divine Blessing is such a powerful defensive skill. Giving up your Slinger Capacity secret for it is not a terrible loss. You give up a little bit of time on the Wyvern Stake Blast, but you can just put a new one into the monster, and you gain the ability to cut the damage you receive in half, which is totally crazy. And I'm surprised more people don't talk about how powerful of a skill it is. It is a totally OP skill. Alright, that's going to be it for the Gunlance build. Let me know what you thought about it. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time.